The diner was nearly empty when Emma, a tired young waitress, wiped down the last table. Her shoes pinched, her hands ached, but she forced a smile when the tall man in a tailored suit walked in. He looked out of place in the small-town cafe, polished shoes, an expensive watch, and an air of quiet loneliness. "Coffee." "Black," he muttered, sliding into the corner booth. Emma poured the cup and noticed a silver locket slipping from his pocket as he reached for sugar. She bent to pick it up, intending to hand it back politely, but when her eyes caught the photo inside, her heart skipped. It was a faded picture of a young woman with warm eyes and a gentle smile. Emma's throat tightened. "That's my mom," she whispered, trembling. The man froze. His hand shook as he took the locket. His eyes filled with tears he hadn't allowed himself in years. "Impossible," he said hoarsely. She was the only woman I ever loved." Emma's chest tightened with confusion and hope. The stranger across from her wasn't just a billionaire customer, he was connected to a part of her life she barely understood. For the first time in years, the man broke down, not as a billionaire, but as a human, haunted by love, regret, and now, a daughter he never knew existed. And in that tiny diner, two broken lives began to piece themselves back together. Emma's hands shook as she set the coffee pot down. The man across the booth stared at her like he'd seen a ghost. For years, she had grown up with only fragments of her mother's story, whispers of a love that ended too soon, and a father she never met. You knew her?" Emma asked, her voice cracking. The billionaire swallowed hard, his polished image crumbling with every second. "Catherine, your mother. She was the light of my life. But her family hated me. They made sure I stayed away." His fists clenched. "I searched for her. I never knew she had a child. I never knew she had you." Emma's heart raced. She thought of the long nights her mother worked 2 jobs, the sacrifices, the quiet tears she'd tried to hide. And here sat a man who could have changed everything. A man who had unknowingly abandoned them. "You weren't there," Emma whispered, hurt leaking into her tone. His face fell. For all his billions, all his power, he had no defense against the truth. "I failed her. And I failed you." His eyes glistened. "But if you'll let me. I don't want to fail again." The words pierced Emma's heart. She wasn't sure if she could trust him, but something inside told her this wasn't just about wealth. It was about a second chance at family. For the first time, she saw not the billionaire, but a broken man aching for redemption. Emma exhaled, her voice soft yet steady. "Then prove it. Not with money. With heart." And in that quiet diner, a fragile bridge began to form, between a waitress who'd known only struggle, and a billionaire who'd lost everything that truly mattered. The billionaire, whose name Emma now learned was Richard, sat silently, his untouched coffee growing cold. Emma's mind swirled with questions, doubts, and a flicker of hope she couldn't ignore. Richard finally spoke, his voice trembling. "Emma, I can't undo the past. But I can be here now. Please, let me help you." Emma crossed her arms. "Help me how? With money? A house? A car? I've lived without all that. What I needed was a father." Her words hit Richard harder than any business loss ever had. For the first time, he wasn't negotiating a deal, he was begging for love. "Not money," he whispered. "A chance. To know you. To be there. To carry some of the weight you've had to bear alone." Emma hesitated. Life had taught her to guard her heart. She'd seen men walk away, promises fade, and dreams crumble. But something about Richard's tears, the way they cut through his carefully built armor, made her believe this was different. Still, her pride wouldn't let her give in so easily. If you want to prove yourself, it starts small. No grand gestures. Just, show up. Richard nodded, his eyes wet but determined. Then I'll be here. Every day, if you'll let me. For the first time that night, Emma smiled faintly. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a beginning. Outside the diner window, dawn's first light painted the horizon. Neither of them realized it, but a new chapter of both their lives had just begun. True to his word, Richard returned. Not in limousines or with flashy gifts, but quietly, humbly. He'd sit in Emma's section, order coffee, and ask about her day. At first, Emma thought it was an act. But slowly, she noticed the change, how he listened, how he remembered the smallest details. One evening, Emma found herself crying after a double shift. Rent was due, and her younger brother needed medicine she couldn't afford. She tried to hide it, but Richard noticed. "Emma, what's wrong?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "It's nothing. I'll handle it. I always do." But Richard reached across the table, his voice steady. "Let me help. Not because I'm rich. Because I'm your father. And fathers don't walk away." Emma's walls began to crack. She hated needing help, but for the first time, she didn't feel judged, only cared for. Still, she wanted to test him. "Fine," she said. "But don't solve it with money. Be there. Come with me. See the life I live." The next day, Richard followed her through grocery lines with coupons, into the pharmacy where she scraped change together, and back to their tiny apartment where her brother coughed on a worn couch. He didn't speak. He just watched, and his heart shattered. For a man who owned skyscrapers, it was this cramped little home that humbled him. That night, he whispered, "I should have been here all along. But I'm here now. And I'm not leaving." Emma's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she believed him. Weeks turned into months, and the bond between Emma and Richard grew. Trust didn't come overnight, but piece by piece, it formed. Richard showed up at her brother's school meetings, cheered at his soccer games, and even learned to cook simple meals in their small kitchen. He wasn't just writing checks, he was writing himself into their lives. One evening, Emma sat across from him at the diner, the same booth where it all began. "You've changed," she admitted softly. "You're not the man who walked in that night." Richard smiled, his eyes shining. "I had everything money could buy, Emma. But I didn't have family. You gave me back what I thought I'd lost forever." Emma reached into her pocket and pulled out the silver locket. She placed it in his hand. "This belonged to Mom. She always said love was worth more than anything. I think she'd want us to have this moment." Tears streamed down Richard's face as he clasped the locket. For years, it had been a symbol of regret. Now, it was a symbol of hope. Emma leaned back, exhaling. "You proved it. Not with money. With heart." And for the first time in her life, Emma didn't feel like the poor waitress struggling to survive. She felt like a daughter, finally loved, finally seen. In that tiny diner, a billionaire found what his fortune never gave him, and a young woman discovered that kindness, forgiveness, and family could heal even the deepest wounds. It wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of something beautiful.